Hey, what's going on everybody? Diptesh here, back with another video. In this video, I'd like to continue looking at some of the performance and efficiency aspects of the Galaxy S26 Exynos 2600. But unlike last time where I had disabled the game optimization service to focus on unthrottled efficiency, this time I will keep it enabled and focus more on the efficiency in the lower power bands. Now for comparison, I will only compare it against my 8 Gen 5 Motorola Signature because it is a slim phone in itself and is thermally challenged like the Galaxy S26. Okay, so I'll start with the Geekbench 6 run, which I ran 7 times back to back to try and match the power draw of the 8 Gen 5 and also a similar score to the 8 Gen 5 so that I'll be able to compare efficiency. And I was able to do exactly that. So I got the peak multi-core performance of the Exynos 2600 at a power draw of 30 watts, which was always repeatable for me. However, on my 6th run, I was able to exactly match the peak performance of the 8 Gen 5. So check this out. At a peak 21 watt, I was able to hit a throttled multi-core score of 9432, which exactly matches the 8 Gen 5's peak multi-core score of 9443. If we compare with what we achieved with the 8 Elite Gen 5 at a similar 21 watt peak, we can conclude that the 8 Elite Gen 5 is 15% more efficient in Geekbench 6. But mind you, this is not a fair comparison as we are comparing the throttled performance of the Exynos with the peak performance of the 8 Elite Gen 5. And it's a fact that efficiency peaks in the mid power band, not the peak power band. So it's not really a fair comparison for the Snapdragon, in that aspect. This specifically for Geekbench 6 multi-core, mind you, we have other tests as well. Geekbench 6 tests different multi-core tasks, so it's a little hard to pinpoint, but we have other tests. Moving on to decompression, which is a specific multi-threaded test. Here we can see the real issue. At a lower power limit of 5 watts, the 8 Gen 5 takes 86 seconds to decompress the 20 GB zip compared to 115 seconds with the Exynos 2600. That is, the 8 Gen 5 is 25% faster. If we go further down to sub 3 watts, then the 8 Gen 5 takes 119 seconds compared to 150 seconds with the Exynos 2600. Next up is Lumafusion. We have that same 4K 10-bit HEVC 25 FPS Rec 2020 multicam timeline, which we will export to HLG using the HEVC encoding at 150 megabits per second. And with the 8 Gen 5, it takes 78 seconds. But with the Exynos 2600, it takes 128 seconds, both pulling almost the same power, making the 8 Gen 5 39% faster. Again, let me repeat, I did multiple runs and I'm comparing only when both devices are pulling almost identical amounts of power to compare efficiency. So I think I am quite accurate when I say that the media engine decoding performance of the Exynos 2600 is not the best. Finally, for pure CPU efficiency, I emulated God of War 2 on Nether SX2 Classic 2.0 using pure software rendering, no OpenGL or Vulkan. Pure CPU rendering, and here we can see a clear efficiency difference. The 8 Gen 5 is again 23% faster. The 8 Gen 5 can sustain 30 FPS at this sub 5 watt power draw, but the Exynos 2600 simply can't. I am lining up the footage as close as possible for an apples to apples comparison and you can check it out. I can only guess that this is because the Exynos 2600 has a 10-core CPU design and perhaps not the best quality node, resulting in requiring some more voltage for optimal performance. Moving on to games, starting with Wuthering Waves Max Graphics. This is a mixed CPU GPU load and I tested my usual benchmark run, which involves boss fights and traversal for a mixed load, not just constant battles. And the performance is actually quite similar. So I would say this is a good showing for the Exynos 27, basically matching the 8 Gen 5. Basically, whenever the GPU raster capabilities come into play, it balances out the CPU inefficiencies against the 8 Gen 5, which has a weaker GPU, of course, because the 8 Gen 5 is a much cheaper SoC. Next up is Hitman Absolution, both devices using the same Exynos 2600 graphics configuration with dynamic resolution completely disabled. And here we have another hiccup with the Exynos 2600. At a low sub 6 watts power draw, the 8 Gen 5 ends up being 27% faster. And I was confused, but I have a theory for this. Certain parts of this Hitman benchmark is highly CPU intensive due to the large number of NPCs, and I feel the Exynos 2600 is suffering from a CPU bottleneck in these parts due to the low power limits, which is why the FPS is quite a bit lower. Finally, I compared Tomb Raider. Both devices running the Exynos 2600 configuration, and again, this being a GPU heavy test, the efficiency is very close to the 8 Gen 5. Remember, Exynos 2600, again, it's a far more superior GPU than the 8 Gen 5. So the 8 Gen 5 is definitely having to work harder. The Exynos 2600 looks to be ever so slightly more efficient than the 8 Gen 5 GPU in the sub 7.5 watt power band. So yeah guys, I think I can conclude that the CPU part of the Exynos 2600 is the weaker aspect. The 10 core CPU design seems to be needing a little more voltage for optimal performance. At low sub 5 watt power band, the Snapdragon custom cores are significantly better for multi-core efficiency. Now whether that's due to Qualcomm's design or TSMC's N3P node advantage or better CPU governor, I can't say that. All I'm doing is interpreting the results. That's it for this video guys. More videos on the way. Thanks a lot for watching. Consider hitting the like button and subscribe. Take care and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.